In this D&D vlog, we're going to explore the opportunity of cursed magic items, asking the question from the perspective of the Dungeon Master, how do we incorporate these into the campaign, into the adventures? And stepping around from behind the DM screen as a player, is there an opportunity for power? Just how much risk can we take? So within that framework, let's jump in and explore the idea of cursed magic items in D&D. Now, as a Dungeon Master, I'm always on the lookout for narrative. I'm always on the lookout for opportunity. I'm always on the lookout to have this synergy with my players and create something memorable. Every single adventure, if I do it right, if I can make it happen, we can create this moment that you will remember through the rest of your gaming career, the rest of your gaming life. And in creating those opportunities, occasionally we can see that with cursed magic items. So there's this idea in D&D, if we reduce it down to the meta, the pure stats, plus something, 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 plus 1 longsword, plus 2 longsword flames on command, plus 1 ring of protection. These various stats that interact with combat, spell abilities, your character, boosting them up. And the narrative of that, of course, is maybe the sword glows a certain color or has certain properties. So generally, magic items allow you a plus something, or they allow you to do something your character class can't necessarily do or do regularly. A perfect example would be like boots of flying or a cloak or a ring of invisibility from that perspective. Cursed magic items do the opposite. They add negatives, or they bring down your stats. And in the traditional D&D rules, once you put on a cursed magic item, you can't remove it unless you cast a removed curse spell. Now, at higher levels, a cleric might have that, or you might have to pay some gold. But this brings into the question of, do you know it's cursed? Do you care that it's cursed? So as a DM, I don't want to throw cursed magic items as a way to punish my players. I don't want to do that. But I do want to look at it from the perspective of, if you're entering into a dungeon, let's just say a dungeon for that framework, there might be some cursed magic items. The various monsters and minions in the dungeon, they see a glowing sword. They don't necessarily know that it's cursed. They know it's magic because some other monster might have a other type of glowing sword. So we see these various elements of cursed magic items. You ask yourself the question, why would anyone hang around one or keep one? Well, they may not know. Or it might be something like a wizard's tower that's exploring the curse or draining the magic, experimenting on it. And from that perspective, the players come across it. So there's lots of reasons why, not just let's throw something in to punish the party. Now, the first type of cursed magic item, -1 longsword. Cursed longsword, -1. Sometimes what we'll see in the dungeon, and different DMs handle this differently. AD&D rules is written, old school. You find a magic item, you have to cast Detect Magic on it. You have to identify it. You won't even know. So there's a possibility, of course, I'm going to describe a cursed sword. Maybe it's ornate looking, or it has a certain look or sharpness to it, a keenness to it. So from that perspective, the players might know, hey, this is unique. This is possibly magic. The wizard casts Detect Magic. It is Detect Magic. If you're in the dungeon, you're doing anything you can to survive, especially if you're like Fritz. We're on level 2. The map says we got to go to level 6. There's this magic sword here. I mean, it is magic. The wizard detected magic on it. I'm going to pick it up and use it. So sometimes what we see in the dungeon is players will utilize cursed magic items thinking they're a plus magic item, not knowing. Now, as a DM, how I handle that is once they lay their hands on the hilt, that sword is theirs to use. I will not say it's a -1 cursed sword, because then what they'll do is they'll just swap it out for something else. Depending on the rules, they can't get rid of it, but they can sheath it and use something else. I'll just subtract 1 from their rolls. Or when they attack, I'll just boost or remove an armor class. I'll make that adjustment manually for myself. So occasionally what we find is just the necessity of the dungeon. utilizing it. So from that perspective, of course, later they'll identify it, realize it's cursed, maybe sell it or just remove curse and get rid of it. So we see that as an opportunity. Now, this opportunity of creating something memorable, cursed magic items that, yeah, they're cursed, but that curse ability might be useful. An example would be like a cursed two-handed sword that just makes you go berserk. Other examples might be certain magic objects that adjust your stats, but in draining off their stats, they give you, certain abilities to utilize where you're trading one for the other. Now, it can't be a fair trade. Let's be honest. If it's a cursed magic item, it can't be a fair trade. So it's not like lose 2 points off Constitution and gain something here. No, the trade has to be pretty steep, pretty significant. It's going to lower your stats. D&D is a game of stats. If we go in that direction under the meta, it's going to lower it. But we're going to give you something unique in return. We're going to give you something interesting. I like these type of cursed magic items. And one could make the argument, the narrative, is it really a cursed item? Because now the player has to make a choice, saying, I don't want to have a -2 to one of my primary stats, or I don't want to lose this or have less hit points when I utilize it. And I'm just kind of pulling stuff randomly from the DM ideas. But at the other time, I gain these 3 abilities per day, or I can utilize this at will. We had in AD&D, I had a cursed magic item. It was a cursed crown of psionics, where you sacrificed 1 of each spell level. Now think of that. This is AD&D, wizard, no baby cakes. Spells are extremely powerful, but they're extremely limited and they're rare. Spell slots are something that you actively try to cultivate. An example would be like a Pearl of Power, right? 1 extra first level spell cast is huge. Ring of Wizardry. I always wanted a Ring of Wizardry. Anytime I played a wizard or an illusionist in AD&D, I'm still working on it, guys. I'm still trying to get the coin for a Ring of Wizardry, but that's another example to boost and Ring of Spell Storing. So imagine now you're a wizard and you lose 1 spell from each level. You're like, that's too steep. But based on the spell levels, because you're going to progress, you gain psionics. You gain the ability to use that. Psionics in AD&D are very rare, very powerful. All of a sudden you're like, well, if I lose 1 spell slot, it's not like I'm losing a 7th or 8th level spell, but if I lose a 2nd or a 3rd, I don't know, maybe I can supplement that with some wands. Maybe I can cancel that out with a Pearl of Power or a Ring of Wizardry. This idea of cursed magic items, forcing the players to make a choice, forcing the players to roll the dice and see, I can deal with this bad, but look at what I gain. But when I do that as a DM, there has to be a steep price. It's not like gain free psionics and you lose 1 first level spell. No, there's got to be a progressive tax. There's got to be something pretty significant. And turns out the player that utilized this Crown of Psionics, they did make it up with boosting other items to gain their spell levels back. They had to invest the coin, but they were pretty potent. They were pretty powerful with that. It was an interesting artifact. And from time to time, if you remember, in the back of the manual, you could create artifacts and write in their powers. I had a little footnote there with my Crown of Psionics. It's still there to this day. Some say it's still there to this day, and it is waiting for adventurers in my AD&D campaign to discover it. But from that perspective of the narrative, from that perspective of a player and as a DM, I think we need a little bit more cursed magic items. I think you need to throw in a little bit more. D&D Modern has kind of eliminated that because anything that doesn't give you a bonus seems to be cast to the side. At the same time, as a DM or a player, personally, I might roll those dice. You know what? Risk versus reward, it's a steep penalty, but if it gives me a little bit more ultimate power, I might put that crown on. I might draw that sword. I might put that ring on and never take it off. Your perspective as a player, as a DM, cursed magic items, what place do they have and how do they play out in your games?